Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to this new edition of the Atlantic Council's Criminal Markets series. Today, my name is Isabel Chiriboga, and I'm the Assistant Director of the Adrian Arsht Latin America Center here at the Atlantic Council. And we're going to be talking to Wilson Hernández from the GRADE, Peruvian think tank, who leads all of the work of security, organized crime, institutional reform, and everything related to Peru's insecurity, which has been rising over the last couple of years. And so, Wilson, thank you so much for joining us today. Your work is truly impressive. So I would like to start by asking you the first question. And so tell us a little bit about what's the criminal landscape right now in Peru. We've seen some data of higher homicide rates, and the lack of data in Peru is really something that we're here working at the Atlantic Council with regards to lack of data of criminal markets and criminality across the region. So I know that you work specifically on that and the different data that is available in Peru to truly measure the level of criminality and the level of insecurity, which has been garnering a lot of media attention. So I did want to ask, tell us a little bit about the criminal landscape and how it's going.
Hi Isabel, thanks for having me. So Peru is currently in a very complex situation. So extortion and homicides have risen in the last 3 or 4 years. So it seems to be related to how COVID changed the landscape in Peru for criminal opportunities. And to measure that, we have like a couple of data tools. So we have police reports, which are not accurate. Only 20% of people report the crimes to the police. So it's an incomplete measure. And on the other side, we have some victimization surveys, which are really good. However, they are not good to capture organized crime. So extortion is like a bad measure in these surveys. So what we have in its good quality information, but incomplete, is some report from news papers saying that it has grown on several specific cities, and you have like a lot of regional reports saying what's happening in human trafficking, illegal mining, illegal logging, drug trafficking at different levels. So the main problem is that we don't have like a complete set of data to understand what's happening at the national level and even at the regional level.
Okay. And what about some of the trends in the geographical areas within Peru that perhaps are seeing a rise in crime and a rise of illicit activities? Is there any trends, whether it's, for example, the absence of the state in those areas or just those areas being rich in resources? What are some of the trends that you're seeing that are creating that rise in violence?
So the diagnosis is very heterogeneous. So if we talk about extortion, for example, it kind of started 20 or 30 years ago in a city of Trujillo in the north of Peru. Then the model moved to Lima just a couple of years ago, and it's expanded into the regions with most population. The model has increased its violence, has increased its size. So what we have is like a lot of micro-organizations committed to extortion. Okay. So there is not a clear understanding of which regions or why. My impression is that basically is where are the most where do you find most opportunities for committing this type of crime? Okay. So in regional terms, we have like the state capacity is medium or low level. And you have like additional pieces of information. For example, if there's an opportunity to collude with a public servant, a police officer, a public prosecutor or something, it's going to be easier because you tear down the obstacles to increase your extortion rate, for example.
Yeah. And any like specific areas with the illegal mining, because I know that that's a big kind of criminal market that is right now booming in Peru, specifically illegal gold mining. Are there specific areas where that tends to happen more than others?
Yes, Madre de Dios, for example, is one of the regions in which this happens very commonly. Okay. And I think I return again to the opportunity scheme. So where there is opportunity to promote that type of illegal activity, that is going to grow. Yeah. So if you put some effort into specific zones, for example, human trafficking and illegal mining, who is very common in La Pampa, which is a region isolated in the forest of Peru, you're going to understand that the previous efforts didn't work because the state capacity was low, because enforcement was really low, because there was a lot of corruption going around, and because all the things that you should trigger in order to reduce crime were not working.
Interesting. So we know that also Peru's level of informality is very high. Is that also, do you link that to, for example, the level of extortions or the rise of extortions right now? Because I believe it's over 60% of Peru's economy is informal. Does the fact that they are not linked to, a formal economy make them more vulnerable to these types of crimes?
Yes and no.
Okay.
So the first part is yes, of course, because, for example, there's a large number of public transportation buses being extorted.
Okay.
So, and they have money in cash. So it's like a very informal sector. So it's a very easy sector to extort because they have money, a lot of money in their offices. So that's the first part of the question. What happens if you change the system of payments and you pay by card?
Yeah.
So you are going to delete the cash immediately, but you can still target the company, the bus company,
Right.
for example. So in certain cases, we have seen cases in which the criminals stop targeting the bus drivers and they have moved to a higher target, which is the owner of the company. So the main message here is that organized crime is very adaptive. So it doesn't matter how many incentives you put, they're going to very likely overcome with them. So that is very challenging because it's not that I'm going to disappear extortion in bus transportation, but how can I keep this public safety in a good state for a long term?
And how do you do that, right? That's the question, because there are no really good policies that we've seen across the region that can truly tackle the rising levels of violence, the rising levels of extortions, of homicides, to control some of the criminal markets that are fueling some of these organizations. So any recommendations policy-wise that you think would help Peru specifically to kind of curb this level of violence?
I think we can think of in terms of two big alternatives. So law enforcement has to be effective, has to have fast tracks, and has to have a very high visibility. So what I mean by that is that you have to get rid of corruption. You have to give better training to judges and prosecutors because the complex organization of these organizational structures, they hire very competent lawyers. So sometimes it's very difficult to gather all the materials to have like a good sentence in judicial terms. And in the other sense, what you need is to disconnect the youth from these opportunities that come from criminal organizations. So how do you do that? I think that the best idea is to create a base of social opportunities for everybody, no matter where you are, no matter which school you went for. And so in this sense, what you can have is long-term impact and create a new route for youth that are maybe attracted by this type of life.
So it's definitely recommendations that are a little bit more long-term, but anything immediate, anything in the short term that could perhaps work to curb the level of violence?
Employment programs for youth work on the short term.
Okay.
So there's a lot of evidence saying that if you create new opportunities for these people, and there are also other types of programs, for example, cognitive behavioral therapy, help people understand their choices, avoid violence, they work on the short term. For example, in the US, part of the work in Chicago is very related to cognitive behavioral therapy, how you can expand this program that are delivered at a very micro scale, how that can change crime rates in the short term.
Interesting. Well, we are the Atlantic Council, we are a US-based organization, so I do have to ask, US-Peru ties, very important. Have you seen any sort of cooperation between the US and Peru on security specifically, on ways to address this rising levels of violence?
I think there are models that we can think of.
Okay.
So at least at the public level, I do not know many of these cooperations, but I think that I would mention 2 or 3 aspects here. One is training, because you have intelligence-led organizations, strategies that we can take advantage of. We have our own knowledge, so I think that the mix of both can be very productive. Second, evidence-based interventions, because we have municipalities, more than 1,800 at the national level, who can take this evidence, transform it into their needs, into their context, to see what works and what doesn't work to reduce crime. And I think that the third possibility is thinking more about international criminal markets, is how we can build international task forces to to understand the regional flows of money, the regional flows of gun, and so we can cooperate in a broader spectrum.
Well, thank you so much, Wilson, for your time and for joining us here at the Atlantic Council today for these series of criminal market interviews. It's been wonderful to, have this conversation with you, and please continue doing the incredible work that you do on this important topic. Peru has a special place here at the Adrian Arch Latin America Center, so thank you so much, and thank you so much to our audience for joining us for another interview series of the criminal markets.